Today, we're going to completely demystify the math of wealth building. If you've ever looked at $1 million and thought it was just this impossible, insurmountable mountain to climb, well, I'm absolutely thrilled to tell you that we're going to subvert those expectations today. By breaking down the raw numbers, we're going to show you exactly how hard and, honestly, how surprisingly effortless it really is to reach that $1 million mark once you hit a very specific mathematical threshold.
Okay, let's dive right into this. You've probably seen this famous quote attributed to Albert Einstein. But here's the funny truth about it. Historians have literally no evidence that Einstein actually said this. But, whoever did say it was absolutely right. The core concept here is that your money earns a return, and then those returns start earning their own returns. The ultimate goal is simply to get your money to outwork you. So here's a quick look at our roadmap. We're going to define the 100K threshold, walk through Phase 1, the grind, Phase 2, the shift, and Phase 3, the snowball. Then we'll wrap up with a psychological tipping point and the real obstacles standing in your way.
Section 1, the 100K wealth threshold and setting our mathematical baseline. To really grasp this, we need to completely stop viewing our dollars as just currency to be spent. Instead, imagine you're the CEO, and your dollars are your soldiers. It is your job to deploy them.
To see how these soldiers perform out in the field, we need to set up some super realistic parameters for our blueprint. We're going to assume you invest $100 a week. That breaks down to just $14 a day, which, let's be real, is practically the cost of a fast food combo, a couple of fancy coffees, or just an impulsive online purchase. We're also assuming an 8% average annual return. Now, sure, the S&P 500 often returns closer to 10%, but we're using 8% to conservatively adjust for inflation and give you real purchasing power numbers over a total time of 36 years.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate power of compound interest. Notice how the final million is broken down. Over those 36 years, you'll have personally contributed about $187,000 out of your own pocket, but your final account value crosses the $1 million mark. That means the market generated roughly $800,000 in pure growth that you did not have to work for. You worked for the initial seed money, which is just 18% of the total, but the market eventually stepped up and did 82% of the heavy lifting. That ratio right there, that is the entire argument for starting early.
Moving on to Section 2, Phase 1, known as the grind, covering years 1 through 12. And guys, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is absolutely the hardest and most frustrating part of the whole journey.
Starting right here at year 1, you begin with practically nothing. It's just a single snowflake. It takes a full 12 years of consistently investing $100 a week just to reach your very first $100,000. I mean, think about how long 12 years is. That's 3 entire presidential election cycles. That is the time it takes a kid to go from their first day of kindergarten all the way to walking across the stage at high school graduation. During this 12-year grind, your balance does reach $100,000, but notice the massive gap here. Over $62,000 came straight out of your pocket. The market only chipped in about $38,000. So during this initial phase, your money is really just starting to warm up. You are the one out there doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting.
Because you're doing so much of the work, Phase 1 feels incredibly tedious. It's literally like pushing a massive boulder up a steep hill or trying to get a giant, ridiculously heavy water wheel to start turning. The source compares it to trying to lose weight by eating in a strict caloric deficit. For the first few weeks, you eat healthy, you count every calorie, and you look in the mirror and nothing has changed. You naturally start to wonder, why am I even doing this? That exact same frustration is why so many people look at their small savings account and just throw in the towel.
But if you don't quit, you reach Section 3, Phase 2, the shift, covering years 12 through 18. This is the pivotal turning point where things get really exciting.
So it took you 12 grueling years to reach your first $100,000. But to double your net worth and hit $200,000, that only takes 6 more years. The timeline is rapidly compressing. And here is a totally mind-bending fact. Mathematically speaking, when you hit $200,000, you are actually already halfway to $1 million in terms of time on this 36-year journey.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the dramatic ratio swap happening in this phase. You personally contribute about $31,200, but your investments generate over $68,000 in returns. For the very first time in this entire journey, your money, your soldiers, are actually outworking you. They're generating more cash than you are contributing out of your own paycheck.
Which brings us to Section 4, Phase 3, the snowball, spanning years 18 through 36. This right here is where the math becomes tangible magic.
At the end of year 36, your account crosses the $1 million mark.
And get ready, because here is the absolute heaviest punch of this entire explainer. At $1 million, an 8% return generates roughly $80,000 a year in pure appreciation. Just let that sink in for a second. You're making $80,000 a year without doing a single ounce of work. You don't have to sell a single share. Your portfolio is just producing almost a typical full-time salary entirely on its own.
And the crazy thing is, the road actually tilts downhill from here. It gets progressively easier. If we fast forward just a few more years to year 45, that portfolio doubles to $2 million, generating over $160,000 a year in interest. At this stage, your initial out-of-pocket contributions barely even matter to the overall growth. The golden goose is fully grown and is just laying golden eggs around the clock.
Section 5. The psychological tipping point, and exactly why crossing into six figures changes absolutely everything.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a really powerful psychological trifecta. Because something almost magical happens mentally when you hit six figures. Hitting that first $100,000 provides massive validation. Going back to our diet analogy, it's the exact moment you look in the mirror and finally see six-pack abs after months of a strict caloric deficit. You don't immediately go out and eat a tub of ice cream, right? Instead, you get this huge surge of increased motivation. That motivation leads to bigger contributions, which naturally drives you toward career progression so you can earn more to invest more.
The source material heavily emphasizes that your career acts as the underlying engine to accelerate this entire timeline. By intentionally taking directed steps, gaining real clarity on your goals, aggressively going after that promotion, negotiating the salary you actually deserve, and building a real roadmap, you increase your income. And a higher income means you can invest far more than $100 a week, putting that entire compounding timeline into absolute overdrive.
Finally, Section 6. The real obstacle is consistency and time in the market.
So the crucial point is that we need a grounded reality check here. The true challenge of wealth building isn't the math. I mean, nobody argues with the math. Instead, here is the massive perspective shift you need to walk away with. Hitting the $100,000 mark is not merely a 10% milestone on your way to $1 million. In terms of sheer effort, the grind, and the time required, $100,000 is actually 1/3 of the way to $1 million. The first $100K is just the base. It's the launching pad. Everything after it gets progressively easier because your money is finally working alongside you.
Which leaves us with one final provocative question. Do you have the patience to let the snowflake roll through the grueling 12-year grind? The absolute biggest obstacle is avoiding that get-rich-quick thinking. Are you willing to weather the boring early years so that one day your money can do the working for you? It's a choice you have to make today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next explainer.